like I said, it's.
So I guess
What has moral weight is reducing negatives, and when we're talking about we're creating these positive experiences by cutting out cancer, reducing childhood tumors, by curing hunger, like all these things are positives. Again, that kind of goes to my argument, which is that we're creating so many issues that really can't be solved without going to the source, which is the DNA molecule, which is birth.
okay. So when you said everything, you believe that it comes from nothing. So taking the DNA as an example, it's a lot of information, yeah, and it's information that gives, let's just say a dictionary. Yeah, you have loads of words in there, and clearly those words didn't come by chance. There was somebody behind it. Yeah,
there are forces behind it.
Yeah. So a lot of information indicates a designer of sorts or a creator of sorts. Can you give me an example of a lot of information in your experience that has come by chance or by nothing?
Well, I don't think anything comes by chance. It comes by there's
by
always
nothing.
something that causes something else. So, I mean, obviously, something doesn't come from nothing. I guess that's what you're trying to say.
Well, that's my view, but obviously I don't want to put it on you. I'm just trying to get you to see it from a different angle. That if you look, Sarah, even in your experience, in my limited experience, I've come to the park. No one's ever given me an example of a great deal of information that just sporadically just pops up, and that's indicative of design. So what I'm saying is that if you take the inference to the best explanation, you look at yourself, you look at the symmetry of your face, you look at the functions of your organs and your body parts. They all have a function. Yeah. For you to assume that it came from nothing, I think it's what you're doing is you're taking something really integral away from the conversation here by giving it an answer that I don't think even yourself you would really kind of, it sits peacefully with you, believing that there was absolutely nothing once upon a time, blankety blank, and then suddenly everything emerged. Sarah emerged, I emerged, ink, cameras and intelligence.
But you believe that it created itself.
But that's a contradiction, isn't it? It's like, so that to me doesn't make sense either, because it's like a mother giving birth to herself, which again is a contradiction in terms. And we don't go about our life, living on, saying contradictions. So there's a degree of rationality and logic to kind of our existence as well.
You'd have to ask someone who studies this kind of stuff. Probably not kind of a random person on the street who's into philosophy.
But philosophy actually delves in these.
I think that's more of a scientific question, where the world came from, where the
not
Big
necessarily.
Bang came from. And I mean, it can be a largely religious question. People answer it that way. I choose not to.
Science.
I encourage people not to, but
science answers the how. I would argue religion answers the why.
Well, religion or for me, philosophy.
Philosophy is the study of various ideas, and one of those ideas incorporates religion, which is God. So philosophy will challenge the ideas of a God, no God, etc., etc. What science tends to do is science tends to formulate, descriptivize what's around us. For example, forces. Forces describe how things happen. Forces don't cause things to happen. The Big Bang is a mechanism. It's not agency. So explaining how things are happening, that's fine, but it doesn't explain away the designer of said thing. And I guess the point that you were saying was, how is this relevant? And I think we kind of started this conversation a couple of times, but we got kind of derailed, which was that it's relevant, Sarah, because when you're talking about morality, either there's objective morality or subjective morality. Objective morality, the only way you get objective morality is from God.
I disagree with that, because
Sure.
I believe that
Feel free to jump in, but if I just finish the point, just so you don't think that I'm taking you on a different tangent, objective morality, I believe, and you're more than welcome to challenge that a bit later on, which is you get that from God. Subjective morality, if you're basing it upon a semi-harm principle, reducing harm. But even harm is subjective. It's subjective on cultures, it's subjective to communities, and even how people see suffering as well. Some people see suffering as that which, makes the man, or suffering that destroys the man. Some suffering that comes from God, if a person believes that they have a purpose and that there is a life hereafter, then this suffering is a means of them getting to the life hereafter. This is not the life. However, Sarah, if you believe that this is the only life, that this is it, then do you see that then there is going to be a bit of a clash, because what you're doing is you're dealing with somebody that believes that there is an afterlife, that there is a purpose, that there is a God, as opposed to somebody that believes, look, there is no purpose, comes by itself, contradiction. There is morality, but again, that morality, no two people will agree on that morality. Because let's just say you might say, okay, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to shout. I might say, I'm not going to go there, I don't want to shout. But again, if you look at the context, there's a child that's about to cross the road. You shouting can save that child's life, or according to your worldview, reduce the negative. But regardless, some person will see that pain of the vocal cords being strained as a positive, because I think even reducing the negative is a positive.
Yeah.
So those are examples like surgery. Surgery is an example that I gave. Even sports. Somebody that will become stronger at the gym. These were examples that I gave of things that incur suffering, but have a reduced or have a net positive, or even even a general positive as well. That was in essence where I was leading the conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to sort of respond to that, but I guess starting with, there's so much. Objective, subjective morality, I would say, I don't think that, sorry, there was just a lot to.
No worries, I can repeat some of the stuff if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the only reason I said it all in one go was because I was looking at your micro expressions, and it kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like you were like, oh, he's taking me down on that path, and I don't want to be rude.
Yeah, I do think that we're getting away from the main.
So that's why, so that's why I brought it back to the position of morality, and I showed you how it's important, regardless. If we don't talk about God, talking about morality itself will be pointless. Yeah, it's like a heart can't survive by itself.
Yeah.
It needs an organism that contains the heart. It needs a system.
Well, that's sentience. That's us. We have that heart, and that's the most valuable thing I think in the world to protect is not just humans, obviously, all living beings who feel.
How can you protect something when you're calling for its mass extinction?
Well, that's the whole point. Once we are here, we exist, and we can suffer. Therefore, we are important to protect. Those who aren't here, because when you say extinction, it's this big sort of scary, like big scary word that kind of carries all these. I'm not.
You can give me a synonym if you want.
Well, I'm not happy. Extinction is fine. I think it's fine to use that word. It's not, a swear word, whatever. I think that when we talk about extinction, I'm not talking about like mass murder of everyone.
Of course.
I'm talking about working towards a future where we don't exist, and that's. We're all going to die, no matter what. Everyone who's brought into existence is going to die.
Just remember your point. Just remember that point, because I don't want you to lose track. But when you say, I'm not calling for a mass extinction, I'm not saying...
I am.
Yeah. Of course, I knew that. But also, increasing one's life, are you in favor of that? So the people that are alive, okay.
Yeah.
Let's
have the best life that you have, like possibly.
So surgery and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
But... Okay, so you're looking at the net negative, so you don't mind these negatives that give a positive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not arguing against, surgery. I'm not arguing against, yelling at someone in the street so they don't get hit by a bus. I'm about reducing suffering overall. And it only follows so that not creating a being to suffer in the first place is the best way to reduce suffering for that being. There's...
What about unintended pregnancies?
I mean that's a whole other another issue. What I feel about abortion. I'm
No, just unintended. Two people that copulate and they don't intend to have a child, but a child emerges.
Well, I think that it doesn't really, their intentions don't really have any bearing on that child and their life. I think that most people put more choice into what to watch on TV than whether or not they want to have a kid, and that's the biggest choice that you can possibly make.
So you're pro-contraception, yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's a moral standpoint in itself, isn't it? So what about if you're using contraception, but that contraception doesn't work and you conceive?
Yeah, and you've made you had an accident and something really terrible happened. I think that has the same moral weight. You did the best that you could. These are just things that happen. That doesn't have anything to do with what's right or wrong in morality.
Would you say you're a happy person?
In a lot of ways. I'm comfortable. I have a decent life. I'm very, very privileged, and I understand that, and I know that there are many people and other animals in this world who live excruciating lives.
So you're having a happy life.
Yeah, generally. Not everyone's happy all the time.
How do you judge? For what to you, if you were to see somebody, what to you would seem that they're unhappy?
To everyone has. That's hard to say.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example through an analogy of sorts, which is a king. He was with his fan club, and they were going, and they saw a farmer asleep under a tree, and he said, "I would give up my wealth and I would give up everything, just so I could swap my life with that farmer, so I can have a peaceful night's sleep, just like he's having." So, the thing that we take away from that is to each their own in terms of pleasure and pain. But to say that, the whole of humanity, it seems to me that they are, that there's mass suffering. Look, you only appreciate night because of day, happy because of sad, tall because of short. As human beings, we are people of contrast. Without contrast, we fail to it's not how we're wired. It's not how we live our lives. It's only if you failed an exam once, you understand what failure feels like, then you're going to work harder next time. If you've only undergone success, then to you, it's not going to be, do you see? So that's how people of theology, people that believe in God, that's how they frame negativity, and that's how they frame pain as well. And a child,
that's fine. However anyone perceives pain in their own life is again, I don't think that has any weight on your morality. And again, maybe that's another way that, would you say that I'm sorry, I think that you did answer this, but that you believe in objective or subjective?
Objective.
You believe in objective morality,
Yeah.
but that comes from God, not
Yes.
from somebody else. I believe in objective morality as well, and I think that objectively, the right answer would be whatever action.
Can you give me an example of an objective morality that's common to everybody?
You could just say something really simple, like whether or not I punch someone. Is that wrong or right? The amount of suffering.
I would argue right.
Well, if that person's going to punch three people, then punching them to stop them, I'm not. That's talking about deontology. That's one action is always right or always wrong. If you, even with procreation, you could say you're going to create one person, but that one person is.
But do you see how
to,
that's not objective though?
Save hundreds of others from coming into existence. That's not saying that morality is objective. That's saying situations on a case-by-case basis.
But isn't that the definition of subjective?
No, I don't think so. I think that
case by case.
Case by case is different than objective. I think that the overall theme of that is just that whatever causes the least amount of suffering is the right answer. Suffering, and again, that follows that suffering is the only thing that's really of value that there is to protect, especially when it comes to philosophy, morality, ethics.
But I think even that requires evidence in itself, because if that's your case, I would say, how would you prove that to a skeptic?
Feel pain.
And if a person feels...
That's it.
No, but...
They have a bad experience.
Not necessarily, Sarah.
Experience true suffering. I mean, experience an excruciating death and say whether or not, like, it would be... whether or not you want it to stop. I think that it's...
But here's where agency... Sarah, here's where agency does matter. Because if you believe that there's pain, but pain is made from random molecules coming together, and it's a experience that it's not linked to any morality or any theology or any God, then that would be an issue. But if you believe that pain is a consequence of life, and the pain is in the control of the creator of everything, and he can alleviate that pain, and or that pain can be a means of a great deal of pleasure later on, for example, paradise, or for example, like, I was born without a father, I didn't have any siblings, violins, whatever, but then afterwards, the experience that I gained afterwards of standing on my own 2 feet, learning from experience, studying even what you're talking about as well, a bit of philosophy, a bit of science, etc., understanding, and then helping and assisting other people, I feel, to me, that's given me a great deal of happiness.
Yeah, that's great. That's really something worth doing.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say is, according to my worldview, and that's why I think the God question is very important, because if a person believes in God, then to me the net or the belief is that, generally speaking, God doesn't burden a soul more than they can handle. That's a principle, and that's a principle that, of course, but that's, do you see? But here's the interest, and that's why I undercut that, and I tried to undercut that towards the beginning by discussing God, because I believe that you cannot divorce God from the equation, because
you can't. But
the thing is, even if we're speaking, even having a discussion, I would argue even you can't either, because of this. Because when I was talking about infinite regress of dependent things, you would have to resort to absurdities to take God out of the equation, or to say, you know what, let's just deal with the morality for now, because either you would resort to saying, you know what, it came from nothing, or there can be such thing as an infinite regress.
I don't think that's more absurd than saying that God created it. Like, in all honesty,
you don't have to. You can say what you want to me. I'm not going to be offended, Sarah.
It doesn't.
Say what you feel. That's why I've come to you. If I'm giving a few, I don't mind receiving a few. Yeah, you know what I mean. So yeah, you can be at ease. You think it's absurd? Okay, I would say the inference to the best explanation, according to any and every experience that we've had, is that when we see design, it implies a creator. And when there is not a single example, when we've seen design and we've concluded that there is no designer, I'm saying that the inference to the best explanation and the logical explanation, whether you you refer to Occam's razor, or whether you go to the contingency argument, whatever it is, I'm saying all of these forms of knowledge point you towards a creator. None of them point towards something coming from nothing. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not here to argue about religion, to argue about who created the universe,
But
as
Sarah,
an atheist.
But Sarah, it's going to come up. If you're saying, look, procreating requires a moral justification, and morality itself is subjective.
But why doesn't it? Why does it not require a moral justification?
Because even if you take morality out of it, it's a biological imperative for the survival of mankind.
Yeah, of course it is. And again, that's like suffering is a biological imperative. We need to suffer. We need to procreate in order to keep going. But why? Again.
But why is a question of philosophy, isn't it? Why is a question of religion? And when you divorce religion out of the question...
you can ask somebody else to answer the question for you, or you can answer it for yourself based on what you know to be right and wrong. And I mean, I think that that's something that we need to... Whatever you believe in, you need to also answer for yourself whether something is right or wrong. If you can't challenge your beliefs, you're never going to really answer or understand those questions for yourself. So no matter what you believe in, you need to ask yourself, is what I have been taught by the Word of God, my culture, whatever it is this right? Do I know this to be right or wrong? So that's why, I don't think that the question of whether or not God exists is necessarily relevant. I can't have
the point that you said about questioning, the point that you said about questioning, just so I don't forget that, is that, look, by all means, if you are searching for God, you're searching for theology or whatnot, you need to question at the beginning. Yeah, you need to question if there's a God, you need to question revelation, you need to question prophethood. But now what you're doing is you're moving the dial slightly. Because let's just say I have questioned those three things, and I have seen them to be philosophically, rationally, empirically, in terms of history, etc., to be correct, and I have concluded the inference or the best explanation is a God. It therefore necessitates that then whatever God is saying is the truth, is the moral superior, because there is a God. If a person disagrees that there's a God, then of course the question needs to be on if there's a God or not. But if it can be proved, and if a person accepts that there is a God, evidentially or whatnot, and that's done, to then question, okay, I believe that there is an all-knowing, all-seeing creator of everything, but he got it wrong here. It's a contradiction. It doesn't make sense. Do you see? That's why it's so important. And I see what you're saying. Question existence of God and all that. By all means, that's why we're here as well. And that's why I'm saying, you can ask me questions on the existence of God as much as you want.
Yeah.
However, once we've established the baseline and we've established that there is a God, He sent the Quran, He sent the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then to say that, okay, but this thing that he said about the Quran, I think we can answer better than him. To me, that doesn't necessarily make sense. That's...
Yeah, well, we can agree to disagree on this.
Of course,
I'm not going to change your attitudes, and it seems like you're not really going to change your attitudes either. So, I think
with these conversations, it's interesting because it widens our perspective. We get to see and experience things from different angles. It's not necessarily about convincing anybody or getting them to kind of see your thing.
Yeah, I know I'm not going to convince everyone, and you know that you're not going to as well.
Of course. So with that,
again,
So
we're
again,
getting away from the main argument.
Yeah. So I would argue, Sarah, the main argument is not about somebody else giving birth to a child. It's about you. Yeah. It's about Sarah. It's about how you came into the world, where you're going. Because look,
would you say that we don't have any imperative whatsoever to help others?
Not necessarily.
We should only control our own lives, because
what I'm saying is that's a part two. Part one is when you're speaking to any skeptic, Sarah, the one thing that you have to get them to accept is that they exist. Because if they don't believe that they exist, the conversation is futile. So it starts with thyself, and that's why even Descartes said his famous cogito ergo sum. Yeah, I think, therefore I am. So that's why, although I understand you've come, with a purpose, and you're more than welcome to speak to other people or whatnot, but I don't accept this premise that we're detracting away from the main argument, because I believe that the main argument is you. The main argument is me. How did we come here? And is the answer that we are currently given about everything that we see around us, the immense amount of design and complexity? Indeed, there is suffering. But the immense amount of design and complexity and the purpose and meaning that we see around us, I would say that can't be divorced away from the question. And when you do speak to other people today, you'll see this as well. Yep. This will constantly come up in the discussions, because
that's why I don't really go down this, because I don't.
And that's fine.
Talk about
but in order,
I'm not going to change it. Like, if you're religious, I'm not going to change that, and you're not going to change the fact that I'm not. And I don't, like I said, I don't think that. Of course, it has a really significant bearing in the sense that I really can't convince people who believe that they already have the answers.
But you can challenge those views. You can challenge the premises.
That's why obviously we're all here, because we believe that we can spread these memes, we can get the word out there and get people to kind of question the way that they think, and that's really important. But I don't think that, you know, we should necessarily go too far down that road because, you know,
I would say it's that, and
in
that,
this particular conversation, I think
that's fine.
kind of come to it.
and then maybe if you're ever in the park and you're not in this conversation and you see me around, then maybe we can just have a think about what I've said. Even if you want to speak off camera or something, I'll be more than glad to. I understand obviously you've come with a thing, but yeah, that's fine. Yeah, nice speaking to you, Sarah. I'm just gonna take this off you. Take care. Where's
Everyone's gone to pre-awesome.